We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more? We don't need the other products. We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We got a lot of everything.
The first time I heard an American president say we don't need Canadian milk, I kind of chuckled. Then I spent a long silent moment staring at the wall in disbelief. It's the sort of bravado you would expect from campaign rallies, not really from a country that is more entangled in its neighbors' supply chains than anyone really cares to admit. It's easy to declare independence until you start looking at the cheese aisle. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the United States' alleged dairy self-reliance and what happens when tough talk turns into real-world shortages. This is not just about milk, my friends. It's about cascading effects where swagger at the podium turns into missing staples on your kitchen table. We'll look at how one sentence shifted a continent-wide supply chain, why Canada's role in the American fridge is bigger than you think, and what it reveals about the deeper costs of prideful policymaking, especially when the same playbook is used on lumber, on water, on all the quiet veins that keep two countries alive. If your favorite cheese vanished from your grocery store tomorrow, something local farms couldn't really replace, would you just shrug and move on, or would you notice? Would it change your view of political grandstanding? I'm genuinely curious, Canadians and Americans alike. Have you already seen these shortages where you live? Drop your answers down below in the comments if you like. Before we dive in, a very quick note. My book, Awake, the Practice of Critical Thinking in an Age of Self-Lies, is now out. It's not just about critical thinking. It's about reclaiming clarity in a world full of noise. If you're a builder, a leader, or just somebody who wants to think more clearly under pressure, this one is definitely for you. I've also now added a 24-minute companion podcast that walks through key concepts in depth. So if you prefer to listen and reflect, this is now included as well. All the links are down below, including a launch video that goes deeper into these themes. There's also a subscriber discount, so hit that subscribe button and check it out when you're ready. And one more final thing before we dive in. I'm building a course on AI fluency for people who want to understand the technology shaping the next decade, as I am a computer scientist by training. If you want to help shape what the course becomes, I've made a very short 8-question quiz. It literally takes like 2 minutes tops, and your answers will directly decide the content that I build next. The links are down below. I'd really love your input. Anyway, let's get into the story. I've noticed something about declarations of self-sufficiency, They always sound so brave at first. We don't need Canadian milk. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their water. We're fine on our own. Is the rhetorical equivalent of slamming a door and locking it? Never mind that the house was actually built together. Under President Trump, this door slamming is more than a metaphor. It's policy, broadcast with confidence from the White House lawn, then echoed across the machinery of government. America in this moment is being told it no longer needs to depend on Canada for dairy or for anything else, really. Just cut the cord. If you listen only to the speeches, it almost sounds like 2 centuries of cross-border cooperation can be solved with a single sentence. But the shelves, the menus, and the supply chains don't really get the memo. What's rarely understood and almost always missing from this kind of speech is how intimately tangled these economies are, not just in the obvious ways, but in the hidden arteries too. The US doesn't just buy Canadian milk because it can. It buys it because certain things, Quebec soft cheeses, Ontario's goat cheese, the little luxuries that fill out a restaurant menu or a high-end grocer, can simply be wished into existence by American farms. Goats and sheep are not vending machines. Land, knowledge, and time can't really be conjured by executive order. And this is not just about dairy, my friends. The same performance of proud isolationism plays out when the conversation shifts to Canadian lumber. We don't need their softwood, Trump insists, even as the price of a 2x4 triples in quiet suburbs. Or water, we don't need their rivers until the aquifers run low and city planners start quietly panicking. On the other side of the border, you have Mark Carney, steady, technocratic guy, less theatrical but no less strategic. His public responses tend to be quite measured. His policies are kind of global. But even Carney knows that to think clearly here, you have to hold 2 conflicting ideas at once. National strength matters, yes, but interdependence is real and it doesn't care about your slogans. The market reacts before the public does. When the US president made his dairy speech, importers picked up the phone, restaurant owners ran numbers, distributors began to hedge. No policy had even changed, and already there was a chill in the air. Soon, stores started stockpiling, pushing up prices and creating that self-fulfilling prophecy. If you tell people something is scarce, it becomes scarce. Even before the tariffs, the worry had a way of trickling down to the consumer. The missing goat cheese at the deli, the sudden out-of-stock tags in premium aisles, the menu that just lost its best salad, that sort of thing. None of this is life and death, but it's an early warning, a red flag raised not by activists or academics or think tanks, but by the quiet hum of a market thrown out of balance. The irony is almost poetic, isn't it? The US can flood its markets with cow milk, but when it comes to the delicacies that define a region, a culture, a meal, it leans on its neighbor, and Canada is unfazed. Europe, Asia, the Middle East all want its products. A good critical thinker doesn't just ask what happened, but who benefits from your reacting a certain way. In this case, ordinary Americans are the first to pay the price for bravado that benefits politicians more than people. I find it quietly outrageous, to be honest, how quickly economic reality punishes emotional thinking, and yet how little anyone in power seems to learn from this. I think it's easy to imagine that in a pinch, a country as rich as the United States could simply start making its own specialty cheeses. That's what the rhetoric suggests. Flip a switch, grow more goats, hire more workers, and the market will provide somehow magically. But food systems are made of biology, tradition, and geography, not just capital and willpower. It literally takes years for herds to grow, for land to shift purpose, for skills to mature. The story is the same in lumber, in water rights, in any system that took generations to build, basically. One does not simply wake up and decide to replace Quebec's cheese artisans or British Columbia's timber. And the most tragic part is that the public pays for this illusion. Shortages arrive, prices tick upward, and all of it is blamed on vague market forces, as if those forces were not set in motion by a podium and a camera and a president. I see a certain disbelief in the faces of shopkeepers explaining why goat's cheese is suddenly a luxury item. The ache isn't for the cheese itself, it's for the feeling that the system just works, that grown-ups are in charge. And meanwhile, Canadian producers are almost serene. If the US stops buying, okay, fine, others will. The damage is one-sided almost, yet the narrative persists as if simply declaring self-reliance can override decades of practical, sometimes boring economic entanglement. To watch all of this unfold is to witness a kind of sleepwalking, an entire political class pretending that supply chains are a matter of pride and not planning. It's almost hypnotic in a way, the way certainty is performed on stage, while real-world logistics, milk derivatives, lumber shipments, water rights grind on quietly in the background, unruly and unmoved by speeches. Inside American stores, the reality is already visible. Shelves grow spotty, prices climb, menus shrink, not because of some act of God or foreign sabotage, but because pride tried to override reality. A dairy shortage is not a crisis, not yet, but it is a lesson, a preview of what happens when you try to rewrite the rules of biology, geography, and trade by force of will. And the danger isn't just empty shelves, it's the slow, almost invisible erosion of trust, first in the system, then in leadership itself. People start to wonder what else might vanish next, simply because applause became more valuable than supply. There's a kind of quiet anxiety that settles in, right? If the things you counted on can disappear for reasons that feel arbitrary, what does that mean for everything else that you take for granted? The world is very complex, right? And it punishes both emotional thinking and apathy. That's the paradox here, that if you don't care, you get played. If you care too much, you get hurt. And somewhere in that tension, the public is left to navigate shortages not out of necessity, but out of vision. And in the end, the cheese is only the beginning. Today is dairy, tomorrow lumber or water, or whatever vital thread politicians decide to pull for the sake of a headline. The market doesn't care about speeches. It cares about reality, about goals that take years to mature, about timber that doesn't regrow on command, about rivers that refuse to respect borders, because why would they? Their nature. Independence, as it turns out, is not about isolation. It's about knowing what you can truly do alone and what you can only do together. So I will ask again, if your favorite product vanished tomorrow, would you notice? Would it bother you quietly that the real cause wasn't some storm or war, but a sentence uttered by somebody who's never even set foot in your grocery store? It's the kind of issue that punishes complacency, that rewards clear thinking. If nothing else, let this be a gentle warning that when pride and policy collide, ordinary people pay in ways that never really make the headlines. If this reflection resonates, you might find the videos on Trump's battles over Canadian lumber and water worth your time. They sketch the same lesson, just in different tones. The links to both are below, and if you want a deeper guide to staying awake, my book, Awake, The Practice of Critical Thinking in an Age of Self-Lies, is in there as well. I've also included a 24-minute podcast episode where some of the core central ideas behind Awake are included in a more relaxed conversational way, Perfect if you prefer to listen while walking, driving, or just taking a break from screens. You'll find the link to everything down below. I would love to hear what you think of all of it. As always, thank you for being here and for thinking through these questions with me. If you like the conversation, consider subscribing for more, and don't forget to check out these other videos that I've linked here as the natural next step for a deeper dive.